Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we are taking a massive stack of
A
sources.
really massive stack.
Right, we're talking comprehensive comic history articles, deep dive MCU news features, and a surprisingly dense scientific breakdown. We're exploring one of the most overpowered and, frankly, endlessly complicated characters in all of pop culture. You guessed it, we are taking a magnifying glass to Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch.
It is quite the stack today. And it paints a picture of a character whose story goes far beyond the standard, superhero tropes. The sources frame Wanda's history as this incredibly complex study of how severe trauma, shifting genetics, and decades of evolving creative narratives have just constantly rewritten her reality, both on the page and on the screen.
Exactly. And look, if you are someone who loves understanding the deeper mechanics of these iconic characters, but you do not have the time to sift through 60 years of dense, sometimes completely contradictory comic book lore, consider this deep dive your ultimate shortcut.
It's a lot to get through if you do it on your own.
Oh, absolutely. So we are going to decode how her powers actually work, map her comic book magic directly to real-world science, and track her wild evolution from a C-list villain to a multiverse-shattering force. So let's start at the very beginning. The year is 1964, X-Men issue 4.
Right. Wanda and her twin brother, Pietro, make their debut. But they don't show up as heroes. They're introduced as villains in Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
And her powers back then were just vaguely defined as hex powers.
The early definition of her abilities was charmingly vague compared to where she ends up. Essentially, she just caused highly localized bad luck.
It was so literal, too. She would point a finger, and a girder would conveniently fall on an X-Man, or a water jug would spill at exactly the right moment.
Just tripping people up.
Yeah. The sources mentioned she could blast enemy with a hex bolt, and they would just clumsily drop a ladder on their own heads. It's hilarious to think about that localized bad luck compared to the god-tier feats she pulls off later.
But the nature of her powers wasn't the only thing that was vague. Her very origin was a revolving door of retcons, mostly driven by shifting priorities in Marvel's publishing history.
Which is pretty common in comics, but with her, it's extreme.
Very extreme. For a long time, the comic book world couldn't quite decide who Wanda and Pietro actually were. Originally, writers established them as the children of a World War II hero named the Wizard.
Which, ignoring that terrible name, didn't last long before the narrative shifted entirely.
Right. They were rewritten to be the biological children of Magneto and his wife, Magda. That became the accepted truth for years and heavily influenced how fans perceived her relationship with the mutant community.
Here's where it gets really interesting. According to the sources, that entire mutant backstory was eventually revealed to be a massive retcon. They aren't actually mutants at all.
Which was a huge shock to the fan base.
Huge. The truth is that Wanda and Pietro were kidnapped as babies by the High Evolutionary. For those who haven't tracked his every move, he's the obsessive geneticist who also created Spider-Woman. He took the twins to his lab at Wundagore Mountain to experiment on them, altering their genes to make it look like they had the X gene. But there is a massive magical element to this that I need you to break down, because Wundagore Mountain wasn't just a random lab.
Not at all. Wundagore Mountain is the crucial piece of the puzzle. It wasn't just a mountain. It was the ancient prison of an elder god of chaos named Chthon.
An elder god.
Exactly. This is a primordial entity who literally authored the dark magic book, The Darkhold. While the High Evolutionary was doing his genetic tinkering, Chthon's ancient, chaotic energy seeped into baby Wanda.
So her abilities aren't just a quirky genetic science experiment.
No, she was infused with chaos magic from birth, making her a living focal point for it. That is the bridge that explains how her simple, ladder-dropping probability manipulation eventually scales up to full-blown, universe-altering reality warping.
Wow.
She isn't just throwing hexes, she is pulling from the fundamental chaotic energies of the universe.
And the scale of that is staggering. The sources actually list out 16 distinct powers she possesses. We're talking about an Avenger who can teleport through dimensions and time.
Like that time, her future self hopped through the time stream to save Scott Lang's life.
Yes. She is also one of the only beings capable of resisting the cosmic Phoenix Force, which, even Jean Grey couldn't fully do. And she can completely short-circuit complex machinery. It doesn't matter that Ultron is encased in an indestructible vibranium and adamantium shell.
Wanda's magic bypasses the physical metal entirely and fries his internal systems.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is how the sources map these godlike abilities to real-world scientific concepts.
Hmm.
We have a literal scientific breakdown analyzing what human science is currently capable of that mirrors the Scarlet Witch's powers.
Let's definitely get into the science of it all. Because while kinetic manipulation via sheer will violates the laws of physics, the source draws a fascinating parallel to modern neuroprosthetics when explaining her telekinesis.
The closest parallel we have right now is the development of brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs.
Right.
In modern labs, we have technology that translates human neural signals directly into digital commands. Researchers implant microscopic electrodes into the motor cortex of the brain.
And that lets them control things.
Exactly. When a person simply thinks about moving an arm, the BCI reads those electrical impulses, decoding algorithms translate them, and a robotic limb executes the movement. You think about manipulating the physical world, and the machine does it for you. It's essentially tech-assisted telekinesis, bypassing the biological body entirely.
Which is incredible, but what about her signature red energy blasts and those massive chaos magic constructs? Biology certainly isn't generating blasts of concussive force.
Biology can't, but physics absolutely can. The real-world equivalent to her hex bolts are directed energy weapons.
Like lasers.
We're talking about high-intensity lasers, microwaves, and the shaping of plasma using powerful magnetic fields. Visually, containing and manipulating superheated plasma within a magnetic field looks remarkably like the glowing red magic constructs she throws around in the comics and movies.
Okay, I get the laser comparison for the energy blasts, but how does science even begin to explain the original probability manipulation? I mean, you can't just math a ladder into falling on someone's head or rewrite the fundamental odds of the universe.
Well, you can't rewrite mathematical probability, no. However, the scientific breakdown maps this to chaos theory.
The butterfly effect kind of thing.
Precisely. The idea that incredibly small, almost imperceptible changes can have massive, unpredictable cascading effects on complex systems. On a more practical human level, it parallels advanced statistical modeling and psychological priming.
Meaning we predict what people will do.
Yes. We can't rewrite the odds of a coin flip, but by analyzing massive data sets to predict behavior and utilizing psychological priming, we can deeply influence human outcomes indirectly. It's about engineering the environment so the target naturally makes the choice you want them to make.
Which bridges perfectly into the telepathy and mind control, because she gets into people's heads constantly, manipulating their perceptions.
This is where the advancing scientific fields get truly remarkable. True telepathy doesn't exist, but neural decoding is a rapidly advancing frontier. BCIs are already starting to interpret the intent to move, and researchers are making strides in decoding basic internal speech.
Wow.
And when it comes to the literal manipulation of memory and mind control, the source points to optogenetics.
Break down optogenetics for us, because that sounds like straight-up science fiction.
Optogenetics is a biological technique that involves using light to control cells in living tissue, typically neurons, that have been genetically modified to express light-sensitive ion channels.
Okay, in layman's terms.
In layman's terms, scientists can use tiny lasers to trigger or silence specific neural pathways. In a laboratory setting, researchers have actually used this technique to successfully implant false memories into mice.
Implanting memories into mice.
And even erase specific fearful memories entirely by manipulating the exact neurons associated with that experience.
So we are already mapping the physical mechanics of memory tampering. That's wild.
Yeah.
And finally, her ultimate power. Reality warping and casting massive illusions that feel completely real.
Physical reality manipulation, changing the actual molecular matter of the universe with a thought, isn't something physics allows, but altering how a human mind experiences that reality.
That's a different story.
Completely. That lines perfectly with immersive virtual reality, augmented reality, and perception hacking via direct neural stimulation. If you can directly trigger the sensory regions of the brain, sight, sound, touch, you can create an artificial reality for that person that is neurologically indistinguishable from the physical world.
If human perception is that fragile, and our experience of reality is just a series of electrical signals, it really makes you wonder what happens to a mind that actually possesses the ability to alter those signals on a global scale.
It's a terrifying prospect.
It really is. The sources show a terrifying correlation between Wanda's power level and her psychological trauma. All of this godlike power is fueled by severe, compounding emotional pain, starting way back in her childhood.
Right. After the High Evolutionary returned Wanda and Pietro to their adoptive parents, Django and Maria, they lived a nomadic life.
But Django was forced to steal to survive, leading angry villagers to attack their camp.
The twins had to flee for their lives, and the trauma was so severe that Wanda literally repressed her memories of those years.
And that pattern of profound loss only accelerates as she gets older, particularly involving her marriage to the android Vision.
In the comics, she used her massively enhanced chaos magic to defy astronomical odds to have twin sons with him, Billy and Tommy. It seemed like she finally found a baseline of happiness.
But the sources reveal a heartbreaking twist. She was unknowingly under the influence of a dimensional being named Immortus. Her children weren't just magical constructs.
No, they were unknowingly created from fragmented pieces of the demon Mephisto's soul.
Which is just brutal, because Mephisto eventually comes back and reabsorbs those fragments. Her children are wiped from existence right in front of her.
To ease her agonizing grief, her magical mentor, the ancient witch Agatha Harkness, decides the best course of action is to cast a spell that wipes Wanda's memory of her children entirely.
Which, spoiler alert, backfires horribly, because trauma isn't a computer file you can just delete. It always leaves a shadow.
Exactly. Years later, a casual comment by a teammate pierces that memory block, triggering all of that repressed grief at once.
Because her chaos magic is intrinsically tied to her emotional state, it leads to a catastrophic nervous breakdown.
In the storyline, Avengers Disassembled, her reality warping goes wild. She ends up killing several Avengers, including Hawkeye, Vision, and even Agatha Harkness.
That event completely shatters the superhero community's trust in her. They convene to decide what to do, debating if she's simply too dangerous to keep alive.
Fearing for his sister's safety, Quicksilver manipulates her fragile mental state. He convinces her to use her reality-altering powers to create a perfect world.
This kicks off the massive House of M storyline. She rewrites the entire reality of the Marvel multiverse to create a world where mutants are the dominant species and humans are the minority, all ruled over by Magneto.
But the heroes eventually realize their realities have been overwritten and rebel. The climax of House of M remains one of the most devastating moments in comic history.
Oh, absolutely.
Magneto discovers his own son, Quicksilver, manipulated Wanda into creating this supremacist world in his name. In a blind rage, Magneto kills Quicksilver.
And Wanda, pushed entirely past her breaking point by the endless cycle of violence, resurrects her brother. She looks at her father, blames his lifelong dream of mutant supremacy for all the suffering in her life, and she utters 3 infamous words.
No more mutants.
Just devastating.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, those 3 words fundamentally altered the Marvel publishing universe for over a decade.
M-Day.
Yes, it caused an event known as M-Day, where 90% of the mutant population instantly lost their X genes. Millions of mutants were stripped of their identities and powers in a flash of light.
It cemented her status as a Nexus being.
Right. A rare entity whose personal choices and mental state literally dictate the probability streams and the very fabric of the multiverse. When she hurts, reality itself pays the price.
It's an incredibly heavy burden, and it perfectly explains the creative direction taken when translating this character to the screen for the MCU. We see pieces of all this trauma, the loss of her brother, the loss of Vision, the illusion of her children playing out across Age of Ultron, WandaVision, and Multiverse of Madness.
The translation to the screen was handled with a very clear understanding of that comic history. The sources include a direct quote from Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige that perfectly encapsulates their approach.
What did he say?
He noted, "If you look at the Infinity Saga, I don't think any single person has gone through more pain and trauma than Wanda Maximoff. And no character has a power set that is as ill-defined and unexplored."
Which is so true.
What's key here is that Feige established the Mind Stone didn't give her powers during those Hydra experiments. It merely unlocked what was already dormant inside her.
And point out that the in-universe MCU lore book, The Wakanda Files, officially classifies her powers as genetic, which is a massive narrative shift, especially considering the corporate landscape.
Because of the Disney-Fox merger.
Exactly. With Disney acquiring Fox, the mutant connection is officially weaving its way into the MCU. We even saw Evan Peters, Fox's Quicksilver, show up in WandaVision.
While the movies are slowly exploring those genetic and multiverse implications, the comics have brought her to an entirely new echelon of power.
Bring us right up to the absolute present day in the comic lore.
As of late 2025, following the fall of Dr. Doom, Wanda Maximoff stepped into the void and officially claimed the title of Sorcerer Supreme.
Taking over Dr. Doom's mantle is a massive level up. But of course, given her history, I'm assuming the magical community doesn't exactly welcome her with open arms.
Naturally, the Vishanti the ancient mystical entities who traditionally sanction and empower the Sorcerer Supreme flat out rejected her claim.
Ouch.
Instead, they appointed her resurrected mentor, Agatha Harkness, to the position.
Hmm.
So right now, the comics are setting up this deeply personal, epic, magical rivalry between the two of them, battling over who truly controls the mystical hierarchy of the Marvel Universe.
So what does this all mean? If you look at the entire arc of Wanda Maximoff across these sources, her journey is stunning.
It really is.
She started in 1964 as a misunderstood, supposedly mutant villain with a quirky probability hex, and she evolved into the Sorcerer Supreme, a nexus being imbued with ancient chaos magic whose very grief has the power to rewrite the multiverse.
It's a testament to the flexibility of comic book storytelling. Her character has absorbed decades of changing scientific understanding, shifting publishing rights, and deep psychological exploration. And yet she remains one of the most compelling figures in modern fiction.
To wrap up this deep dive, we've covered a massive amount of ground today. We've explored the High Evolutionary's genetic tampering, the ancient elder god Chthon's chaos magic, and how her abilities map to real-world science like brain-computer interfaces, directed energy weapons, and optogenetics.
A lot of ground indeed.
Most importantly, we've unpacked the tragic psychological weight of being a Nexus being whose trauma dictates reality. It just goes to show the immense value of looking at pop culture through both a historical and a scientific lens.
This raises an important question, though, something for you to consider long after we wrap up today. We talked about how true physical manipulation of macroscopic reality is impossible, but perception manipulation using neural decoding, optogenetics, and immersive technology is rapidly advancing. If technology eventually reaches a point where it can flawlessly simulate reality by feeding perfect electrical signals directly into the brain, will future humans even need a physical universe?
Oh, wow.
Or are we heading toward an evolutionary future where everyone abandons the shared physical world to retreat into their own custom-built digital House of M, rendering reality itself completely obsolete?
A perfect self-contained universe for every single person. That is definitely something to chew on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your reality, and we will catch you on the next one.